What is going on, everybody? BobbyFi with my man Eric Sheets. We're going to be breaking down this Wednesday, December 22nd slate, coming off of a pretty lousy NBA night for me. I didn't really think I made a ton of mistakes, but there was just little things I could have done a little bit differently, and wasn't good enough. I bubbled the big one on FanDuel too, and so it just was frustrating night, but a good NFL night, but obviously frustrating not to have a good NBA night. Sheets, how about you? And then let's jump into the slate.
Yeah, good NFL night, bad NBA night, pretty much the same. No real excuses. It just I made good plays and they all did well, but I just didn't win. It was kind of weird.
Yeah. One of those nights. I felt the same way, and I didn't really understand exactly what I had done wrong, but it just didn't quite work out for me. I'll actually have to go back and look at my lineups a little later today and figure that out. So we are pretty bold for doing this at this time of the morning because I'm still looking at a site that has a projection for the Toronto-Chicago game. It's going to be a weird slate. I can guarantee you guys that. And it's got the big, I guess it's a good and a bad thing that we get all the first games in a bunch and then there's a long break. I don't know that there's not multiple games after the long break. That's all I could say. But let's start it off with Cleveland and Boston. And unless you have any overall thoughts that you want to sort of lean to on the slate.
Yeah, sure. First of all, if you go to, I don't know when you guys are reading this or watching this, but if you go to TrueDFS.com, I did update projections with the Toronto-Chicago game postponed. So it's up to date as it can be at noon. But again, as far as process goes, I mean, if I were you guys, what I do is just like what I was doing when I was just not even providing content. I would watch this show, get an idea for what plays could be good plays, and then make sure that you come back at live at 6:30. Number one, to get the updated projections, and number two, to get our takes on all the news that's come in. I do think it's important to still have this overview of the slate to give everybody an idea of what could happen. But more than any time since we've been doing DFS, I mean the evening review barely resembles the morning review anymore. So as far as process goes, that's what I would do.
All right, I agree with that. It's a reminder, it's a 6:30 tonight live show. All right, so let's pull up your screen and let's get into the game by game, and we'lo'll go from there. And we're actually going to have some interesting things in this first game. It's kind of actually weird to see. I mean, I keep seeing all these trades, and look, everybody knows I'm obviously a Laker fan, and I have respect for LeBron, but I'm not a LeBron guy. But there's all these weird rumors about, God, can you just put LeBron in this Cleveland team and they literally could win the title? And I think that's actually a reasonable-ish argument. They're loaded, they're deep, but they aren't today. They're banged up. So who are you finding that I'm guessing the projections are going to love Kevin Love today, and I think they're going to like Dean Wade. And I think they're going to like Chetty Osman and Ricky Rubio. Those would be the guys in order for me. How about you on the Cleveland side? Then take us to Boston.
Yeah, that's about right. Kevin Love is the best of those of the Cleveland guys from a point per dollar perspective. And what's going to be kind of a common theme, I mean, every day in NBA, which I want to keep revisiting, is when you have guys that rate as good point per dollar plays to separate which are actually good GPP plays versus which plays are just point per dollar plays on a spreadsheet, which you're never going to actually win anything. And there is a difference. And I want to specifically talk about guys like Dean Wade, who always seem to, when he's going to get the minutes, just pop up as a good point per dollar play. But I don't know if he's ever actually won anything.
Oh yeah, he does all the time.
Oh, does he? Okay.
32 the other day. He put up 25-5 the game after.
Is that good?
For 30, I mean, I don't know. We say that all the time, and then we get, we have guys that are happy with their 7x or for 6x. I don't understand how 7x is not a good number, like for 3,800. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay, all right. So right now he's 3,800. Kevin Love again is rates to be a good play. Chetty Osman, like you said, and then and Ricky Rubio. I mean, it's a short slate, so you can certainly play those guys. With respect to Boston, I think the best guy that I have is good. Well, Tatum's is a good play, and in a slate which might be starved for raw points, and we have this conversation a lot. I think it's probably a better play than the value would suggest. And then there is Marcus Smart, who I like a little bit, and those would be the only two guys I would really play from Boston. So either Tatum or Smart. And on the Cleveland side, does it seem bad to play Kevin Love as chalk though, Bobby?
It seems bad to play Jason Tatum at all to me.
Okay.
I don't think 11-1 is a viable price tag. I understand we're going to need raw points, but I mean, he's not any better for raw points really than Jalen. I mean, these guys are basically, when they've played, have been right in the same point range with each other. So yeah, he could have an outlier game tonight, but Jalen Brown's outscored him the last few games and is also overpriced at 9,900. But well, the Kevin Love thing is you're speculating that he's going to get more minutes. He absolutely destroys per minute. So he's the kind of play, if you don't play, you're going to lose if he does anything near what he's expected. Because that his projection at 35 fantasy points in 29 minutes, that could easily be like 45 or 50. I mean, he's like one guy who could almost 10x that probably not that far. Not to mention he has a history in Boston in general with him. Well, that was more with the what's his name, breaking his arm, his shoulder, and costing them potentially a title. But that was years ago. Anyway, but I don't know. We are speculating on the minutes. That's for sure. But you do have no Jared Allen and no Evan Mobley, and obviously no Sexton. This is the kind of time you'd think he would get the minutes. So I think Kevin Love is a good play. And it's going to be interesting to see, because I think throughout the day you'll see different sites that'll have different minutes projections for him. I'm going to probably err on that slightly high end. And I just think Tatum, and I mean, maybe when we get through this slate, I'll change my mind, but I can't see why I would pay $11K for a guy who's like putting up like 35 or 40 fantasy points a game. Like basically, not really 35 or 40. Let's see. Since Jalen Brown has come back, 42, 39, and 49. And then 37, he had the 162 game against Milwaukee. And that was a game where where you had limited Jalen Brown. So I don't know other than the Milwaukee, I don't know what we're expecting from him. Like, he's not a guy who averages like 60 fantasy points a game. Right. And I don't know. I can't get my head around it. If no one played him, maybe you could have an argument, but I think he's actually going to have some ownership. And I on the Boston side, for me, I think I'm just looking at Marcus Smart and Schroeder. And by the way, Schroeder was out for some of those games as well. So sure, it just doesn't really make sense to me playing Tatum on DraftKings. On FanDuel, maybe makes a little more sense. I think that Smart is where I would probably have the most interest on the Boston side.
But needless to say, as we go through the games, if you want to, feel free to chime in if you have a spread opinion on these things, because overall we've been doing pretty well with these.
It feels I have a thought, like I really feel like I can't believe Boston's only 5.5 point favorite in some ways. But at the same time, I believe in Cleveland more than I believe in like any team in the NBA. I've been saying that all year, and all they've done is been the best team. They've been like the hottest team in the NBA, and they just keep losing people and keep playing better. They're like my favorite little, non-Laker team or whatever. Anyway, I can't quite pick that one, but I will drop them in. I'll drop them in as they come along, and this will be one of them, because why don't you start this one off real quick? I'm gonna. Sheets, actually, you know what? I'm gonna pause for 1 second.
Sure.
Sorry about the pause, guys. Sheets, what were you going to? Why don't you start us off with Orlando and Atlanta? Sorry about that.
Yeah, before we go on, there's really no good place to insert this take since it's an NBA review or preview. But as we're going through these, I just mentioned that we're going to give our spread takes as they come up. And as you guys know, I really don't have that many spread takes as throughout the course of the year. But when I do, it's usually based on. They're usually pretty good. I want to throw it in there that really doesn't come from me, but I wanted to pass this along. As you know, Bobby, we spoke to we had conversations with Big Al, who's one of the kind of the leading sports handicappers out there. Remember, the reason why we know him, his brother Jack and I went to college together, and he's my partner on the Survivor Pool stuff, and he's really just super, super sharp. I mean, he doesn't do this for a living, but he's one of the sharper, non-professional gamblers I know, pretty much.
Right.
And we both have very similar views on how teams let down, how teams get up for games and things like that. We did a lot of that in college, and I figured I would throw this out there if anybody's interested. He has a pretty strong take on actually of a college basketball game today. He really, really likes Tennessee at home against Arizona today. Arizona's undefeated and going into Tennessee, and he really likes them a lot. He was able to get them at a cheaper price of like -1. I always see them at -1.5 or 2, but I figured I would just throw it out there. If anybody bets college basketball, I do promise that it's probably better. I don't know. I have much of an opinion myself, but it's got to be better than a 50-50 shot. I mean, if he's giving it to me. So I figured I'd throw that out there for you guys if you're interested.
Yeah, that's I appreciate it. It's good. Good to know. I actually didn't look at the college games, but I think that's kind of, if I certainly would take a look at that one.
Okay. So anyway, so we're moving on to Orlando and Atlanta, and this is where the value is going to be coming from today, it seems, with the entire civilized world out for Atlanta.
And for Orlando, possibly.
And possibly for Orlando. But right now, the guys that I have popping are the Atlanta guys. And I had another guy popping, and he dropped also. So Lou Williams is out in addition to the other guys that I already knew were going to be out. So welcome to Delon Wright season. Welcome to Georgie Dieng season. Welcome to, well, Cam Reddish season is usually at least around. But Dieng we haven't seen in a while. Delon Wright we haven't seen in a while. And then certainly Bogdan at 4,700 makes sense. And then Onyeka Okongwu, Herder, Collins. Collins, I think, is basically the starting point of, well, I shouldn't say the starting point, but he's one of the key starting points to all lineups today. I think that he, combination of points per dollar, upside, raw points, or whatever, that, you know, I think that it's going to be really popular, but I think that he is a
Which one? Who are you saying about that? Which one did you say?
John Collins.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I think that's where you start. And then you go, and then the value guys, or the guys I mentioned, Bogdan, Delon Wright, Dieng. I even forgot who the other guy was, but yeah, this is where, I mean, all the main guys for Atlanta are out except for Collins. So they're all the other guys are going to pop.
Yeah, so I mean, the truth is that Atlanta is actually much less limited than Orlando is. I mean, they have Bogdanovich, they have Kevin Herter, they have Cam Reddish, they have John Collins, they have a Okongwu back now. They've got legitimately 10 guys that they're going to play, maybe 11. So the Jalen Johnson, Sharif Coopers, while some of these guys may get there, I don't know if it's the right thing to do to try to force them in, especially when we don't have we don't have too many of we don't have to double, triple spend up elsewhere. I'm going to rank them like this. Well, I think the way that I would suggest doing it would be taking with the Wright, Herter, Reddish, Bogdanovich situation. I would encourage trying to take two of those guys possibly, and I would try not to play more than two of those guys together. Maybe you could play just one of those guys. For me, Delon Wright makes the most sense, but at the same time, he only makes the most sense because Bogdanovich is just coming back. And I'm assuming they're going to give him all the run, but that doesn't even necessarily feel right. You know what? Honestly, like if Bogdanovich wasn't just coming back, he would make the most sense to me. Herter makes a ton of sense. And I don't understand the projections on Reddish not improving here. We really think that that much usage being gone is not going to affect Reddish. I think it will. So I agree with what you said about Collins maybe being the place to start, but I think a real interesting decision is what you do with the rest of those guys. And for me, I think I would prefer Herter and Bogdanovich as the best plays, but I think that you could just as easily make a case that it's Reddish and Delon Wright. It's going to depend a little bit on the starting lineup. We will have that before lock. So it's one we're going to have to revisit, I think, because I do think this is the part of where you try to get the slate right, because that's a lot of production against a bad defensive team. I still like Atlanta to win this game and cover. They've got more NBA guys, if you want to call them that. And Orlando did a good job on DraftKings, at least, pricing everybody up because of this situation. And I'm not going to play Gary Harris at 5,100. I will play Chuma Okeke, especially if either Cole Anthony or Wendell Carter is out. But even anyway, I think he's a really good play on the other side. Everybody else, because of the pricing, I just don't think I can get to. I love Franz Wagner, but 7,600 just feels like, oh my God, I understand they're short on bodies, but just feels like, can we really do this? Wendell Carter on FanDuel at 7,100 is fine. Franz Wagner, let me check his price on FanDuel. I'm pretty sure he's going to be significantly cheaper over there. He's 6,400, much more reasonable. Even Cole Anthony, more reasonable. So I would play those guys on FanDuel, but I do think Okeke is the one who has really shown us he can have a ceiling game and actually can do more than just, he's not a do nothing guy. Everybody keeps saying he has no ceiling. Of course, the night everybody was talking about how he had no ceiling, he put up 53 fantasy points. That's a pretty good ceiling for a guy who's 5,200. So I really like Okeke. Everybody else is sort of in flux for me, depending on Cole Anthony and Wendell Carter. And then
so Okongwu, it does say is not still on a minutes restriction.
Yeah. But it doesn't really matter because they don't need to play. They don't need to play big. Like they can play John Collins at center. You know, they could literally play the 4 other guys I mentioned with John Collins, and that would be fine against a team like Orlando, who has no Mo Bamba right now.
So if you get like big ownership on Yang, for example, that probably be one to fade if that's the way it happened, right?
If he's starting, I would still take some shots there because he's actually proven that he can put up some numbers when he does. But it feels, I'll just tell you, my first initial thought is that feels completely wrong for us, in my opinion. John Collins can play center. Like, they don't need another guy. So
that's a good point.
You know, they really aren't really down that much. I mean, losing Capella does not, it opens out things up for Collins. That's pretty much what it does. And it opens up rebounds for everybody else.
I think Delon Wright is probably the safest of the value guys.
He feels like it, but is he really safer than the guys who are actually a part of the rotation, like a main part of the rotation, like Herter and Reddish? I don't know. And Bogdanovich, for crying out loud, at 4,700. Like, I mean, Bogdanovich is by far the best play here. Or the best player. He's just it's just coming back from an injury. So we have to get a feeling for his minutes. If you tell me he's good to go, if he's going to play 28 or more minutes, I'm completely in on Bogdanovich.
Okay, I'll definitely make a note of that.
I think we'll figure it out though. That's going to be one we need the starting lineup for. We need to sort of see what's happening, and then we need to hear about Bogdanovich information. All right, what do you think about? You want to start us off with Houston and Milwaukee?
Yeah. So we're right back to DeMarcus Cousins, right?
Yep.
So he's 4,400. He's going to be really, really popular again, and he's going to start again. And it's probably, I don't want to say unlikely, but let's just say that last time he was in there with a chance to close. They didn't let him close. So I think that's certainly worth mentioning. I guess you could talk about the matchup here to see if this is the type of matchup where they let him get 30 minutes if he can handle it.
Oh, I don't think there's any matchup he would get 30 minutes.
Okay.
But I think if he gets 20 minutes, then you're in pretty good shape. Usually.
Right. Well, if he's going to start, he's probably going to get 20 minutes.
Except for he didn't last time. but
he
yeah.
He didn't get 20?
Oh, you're right. He did. I'm sorry. He had 15 in that one game against New Orleans, which was funny because it was at New Orleans. But then he played a bunch. He played actually played 27 against Cleveland
without closing.
And I don't know. He might have closed that one, but they do play big in Cleveland and Houston. I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. It was the New Orleans game that I was.
Yeah, that was the one where he threw everybody off. So he's a tournament play. If he's below my way of looking at a guy like that today, if he's below 25%, you just smash as much of him as you possibly can, or a ton of him. And if
he's got to be more than that, though.
I don't think he does, because there's all this other value, and he's at the one position that we all want to spend up at. See what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, because of Jokic, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but go ahead with this, because with other thoughts on this, because I think this is a really, if this game stays close, I think you've got some things you could do in this game on both sides.
Yeah.
I really like the entire, Milwaukee side of this. I think that they're all like, I will play Grayson Allen again. The weird thing is, the more Cousins is on the court, the worse it is for everyone, because we know he's a usage machine. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like one of those weird things. Sometimes a guy will go out, and like Gary Harris will go out, and they'll be like, oh, well, we're going to play RJ Barrett instead. They're going to play RJ Barrett more minutes instead. So, it's good for everybody else. I'm like, no, that's bad for everybody else, because RJ Barrett will handle the ball and try and get to the basket and things. Like, DeMarcus Cousins is going to take up that usage. You know what I mean? I would say the one other guy, though, who's like that is Bobby Portis. Has always been historically like that, although he seems to have tempered it a little bit. But so if you're playing guys like Grayson Allen, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, I would try to do less of it with Cousins. Maybe just one of them with Cousins if you're going to do any of them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
I think Middleton would be my top guy to play with Cousins. And I think Grayson Allen's a good one too, because they can both sort of just, they could actually end up taking up the usage. Middleton is a little, it's been a while since he's played. So again, it feels weird to play a guy who hasn't played in a little while at 8,300. But Grayson Allen, Cousins, Middleton, and then Holiday I like, but the price is getting to the point where, and he's been really efficient. He's not always so efficient. And then there is they made Jordan Nwora a little bit less desirable with his price up there. But I'm just going to tell you, that guy's going to put up 40 in some of these spots. And I mean, are we kidding? Actually, you know what? Are they just not going to play? Look, have you seen what he's done lately?
Who?
Jordan Nwora. Without Bobby Portis, the last 2 games, he put up 38 and 49.
Yeah.
He played 42 minutes in each of the games because he plays everywhere from 2.5, 3 through 5. So he's actually, Nwora is going to be the guy again. And what sucks is early in the day, he's showing up as a low-owned thing. But are they really not going to play him? No. And they can't tell me that's all because Chris Middleton was out. Because some of it was Cousins minutes too, and he can fit into any position. I think Nwora is going to be, if Nwora is not starting or whatever, just a terrific tournament play.
I couldn't agree with you more.
I think that's a great play right there. There we go. That's something exciting to do. But I do like Cousins and Allen too.
I'll tell you something else that I want to revisit. And I tried this. I don't even know if I actually tried it, but I spoke about it when Cousins they played against New Orleans. I think the situation is the same. Is that I think that Christian Wood's an extremely strong player on Houston. Just to reiterate, I mean, DeMarcus Cousins might be the worst defensive player in the league. And
second worst. Isaiah's back. Isaiah Thomas is back, second worst player.
Right. And so I don't think that Isaiah Thomas is going to have any luck guarding Wood. But I don't think Cousins is going to do much better, even though he's 7 feet tall. So I do think that Christian Wood is going to be a very strong play, and I would play. And they have like some sneaky correlation, Cousins. The more minutes Cousins plays, the more Wood can take advantage of that. So I would consider playing both of them in the same lineup. Actually,
I think it's a really sharp call, but I want to just say it comes with a huge amount of risk. I think Christian Wood is legitimately banged up.
Okay.
And I think that his like ceiling for minutes is probably not going to be much above 30.
Okay.
He's 9,300. So that just worries me a little bit. Now, could he put up 50 plus in 30? Absolutely, in this matchup, and actually for him in any matchup. I think he makes more sense to me on FanDuel to 8,200 because I think getting in that 45 to 55 range, and even again 55 is great at 9,300. But if you're seeing that as sort of his ceiling because of the minutes thing, then it's not so good. And again, I always mention this about Milwaukee. Even with a bad guy at center, they are pretty good at defending the paint.
You mentioned that last time, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just what I've noticed. And by the way, it came back to bite me because I played all the Joe Val and he was fine, but I remember that lineup looked like I could have won everything if I just went a different way. So I think Armani Brooks is one of your tournament plays here, and I think that Eric Gordon's a really good tournament play on the other side if you want to run a stack. Free Eric Gordon, please send him to my Lakers. We need some help.
Yeah. I don't buy any of this. You're telling me that there's rumors that LeBron to Cleveland?
No, there's not real rumors. Just everybody's saying, can you imagine if LeBron just demanded a trade back to Cleveland because it'd be a perfect fit right now. There's just took on a life of its own last night online. There was a bunch of people talking online about it.
All right. So speaking of coming with risk when you play two centers other than Nikola Jokic, so now we have Denver at OKC. And you have Jokic at 12,600. Well,
too cheap.
Here we go, right? So it's too cheap, but remember this is a game of lineups, not players, right? So if you play him, even though he's too cheap, you have to be able to fill out the rest of your lineups. Currently, it looks like you can do it, right? And as we've learned, the longer the day goes on, the more likely it is that you'll be able to do it because because more likely the value opens up. So you can play him, and playing Jokic does carry in this particular game some 3/4 risk. That I don't know what the spread is. They got to be double-digit favorites, right? Or no?
Only 7. OKC has actually been like fighting.
And Denver themselves are not that good.
What?
Denver themselves have not been playing really well.
That's right. Yeah.
So he does rate to be the top overall points play on the slate by about 15 points. So it's kind of hard to make a case to not play him, except the fact that, you know, if you can get points out of other parts of your lineup, you know, if you could get 50 out of John Collins, and we'll get to Tyrese Halliburton or Heald, and there are mid-range guys that have upside here that can take the place of Jokic if you don't want to play him. But I mean, make no mistake, you know, when you have that kind of edge over the field in raw points, it's got to be worth something. And like you said, 12-6 is just simply too cheap for someone with right now with a basically a median projection of 60, when the next best median projection on the slate is 45, 46. You know, so that's it's a tough fade. I think it's going to be 50% owned. And you know, that's tough, but you know, I'm going to have him in some lineups, that's for sure. I don't have much else, I don't think, in this game, whether it be, I mean, speculating on what Campazzo at 3,900, he'd be the next choice I would make. And then maybe, I don't know, Derek Favors. That's pretty much all I got for the rest of this game.
Yeah, I hear you. I think Jokic is a really tough fade, because even if he busts, he probably is the highest scoring player on the slate, like most of the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like just raw points, and I do think the raw points will matter. You know what I mean? And even on that big slate, like I said, I had some lineups with Jokic that cashed pretty deep in tournaments, and that was with him scoring only 49 fantasy points because it was a blowout. I mean, look, I'm going to play that OKC has been, you know, they've been fighting. I don't understand if these early projections are even close on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander being owned 15% at 9,500. All of these guys being overowned in these high prices, or over projecting, or people thinking that they're going to be overowned, makes me just have my natural strategy of, or my reverse strategy of, let's not play, because I like Campazzo a lot today. I think he probably does 5 to 7x. I like Dean Wade actually, but why are we need to play the 3,800 guys? Let's play the guys who we can get 5 to 7 from in the 4K range instead of the 5K range, instead of the 3K range, right? Who have a little bit more safety for the most part. And let's play those guys with a Jokic rather than trying to play two superstars who we're just overpaying for Shai, who's going to get 4x or something most of the time here, or 4 to 5x possibly. 5x would be like a big game out of Tatum, for example. So rather than trying to cram them in, why don't we try to play like the middling guys, the Loves, the Rubios, and then the 4K guys instead of the 8K guys? It's just sort of coming to me as a strategy for today. Of course, that's until we hear about other guys being out, and then everybody, you know, these 3K guys are starting and they're going to play 40 minutes. But at the current way I'm looking at it, that's what my plan is to do.
If it makes you feel better, I have Shai projected for 7% ownership.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm curious about, is where it ends up at the end of the day. And it's going to depend on some value, but people are going to overspend for some guys, which I often encourage us to do. But I don't know if that's the right thing to do with this being the circumstance. You know what I mean? Like, because you have
the way optimizers work and the way people are going to play is that's what's going to happen. They're going to play, you know, like the Georgie Jang at 3,100, you know, and not worry about whether Shai is a good play at 9,500. They'll play it. You know what I mean? Or Drew Holiday at 9,400, or there was another 90, the Tatum, like you said.
It was 11-1, yeah.
At 11-1, you know, where the reality is that while those guys are overpriced, as you mentioned, Jokic is actually cheap, you know?
Right.
So that's, I mean, if you're going to play Jang, for example, it should not be so that you can have the pleasure of playing Shai at 9,500. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you're, like you said, I mean, you should probably go for some of these 4,700s. Like if you get I think you just used him as the perfect example. If you could get clearance that Bogdan is on no type of minutes limit,
or even just a 28 to 32 or something. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, he's like, that's like legit. As opposed to these 3,100s. Like, I don't want to play Bones Highland at 3,800. You know what I mean?
Right.
Anyway,
I hear you.
That's it.
Yeah, the only one I feel absolutely sure of getting there is Jokic. Like, I mean, and getting there meaning just getting me, even if Jokic gets me 50, I think there's still ways to win tournaments if he gets you 50 tonight. I really do. Especially if you get the Jordan Nwora for 45-point game again, because I'm sure I'll be doing that. This last game is a great example of other guys you can play with them, and now they're not going to be off the board, But what will be off the board is the builds where you avoid what's going to be really chalky value for some of these 3K guys by the time the day's over. Maybe it's not showing that way now, but it's going to be that way. What are your thoughts on this Clippers Sacramento game?
What do you mean by that? You think that you don't see any 3K guys in this game, right?
No. I mean, overall,
okay.
like it's going to start popping, and people are going to force in guys like Jang, guys like Jalen Johnson, Sharif Cooper.
I don't even have those guys. I don't even have those guys in my projections. You mentioned them earlier. I don't know who they are.
Well, because they're that's what I'm saying. They're over projecting because they don't know what Atlanta's going to do. But if one of those guys starts, it is going to be a weird fade to fade a 3K guy who could start and play 30 minutes. But I mean, Dean Wade is another example. Kenrich Williams is going to get some ownership. It's more the, Gorgie Jang, if he ends up starting for any reason, could get the ownership. Cam Reddish, who I actually like Cam Reddish, but you see, you know what I mean? Like, and then I don't know, I just think there's going to end up being enough value by the end of the day where maybe we don't need to do that. We could skip it and just jump up a tier and then spend down a tier from the 9Ks or, down to the 8 and the 7s. That's how I would be trying to mix and match my builds today. But the only thing I feel adamant about is that I'm going to play Jokic in most of my lineups.
Good for as we lead into this last game. Good for DraftKings to price up the Sacramento guys, making things a little bit harder. Playing Halliburton at 8-2 is not as easy as playing him at 56, which was just a couple of games ago. Playing Hield at 7K or 6,900 is a little harder than playing him at 52 or 53, which was a few days ago. Playing Me Too at 5,800, and you see where I'm headed for that, and Harrison Barnes at 7,100. Like, none of those guys are particular smash plays. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not good plays also. I still think that you could squeeze some value out of some of this. I still feel as though that Halliburton just has the ball in his hands just so often that I think 8,200 is very, very reasonable for him. So I would continue to play him. Something about the Hield play just rubs me the wrong way for the reasons that we discussed over the last 6 slates that he's been chalky. You have a shooting dependent guy. It's kind of tough, but where's his ownership going to be today? 15%. So that's what makes this game fun. You want to know the truth. So
I think by the end of the day, maybe it comes down a little bit, but maybe.
Yeah. And so you have I like Halliburton, and then on the LAC side, like right now, I don't see that much except you could add Paul George to the list
of the overpays. Yeah.
Of the overpays, and I don't know what happened with because he's 3,200 again. What happened with Ibaka and Zubac the other day? How did they split those minutes up?
Well, for one thing is they don't necessarily keep them both off the court at the same time. They can play together. I did think it was encouraging. What I would say is I don't think I have interest in playing Ibaka yet because again, it fits in that 3K sort of what are we doing kind of thing.
Yeah.
But not only in addition to it being a good matchup, his first game back for him to play 22 minutes is a little bit encouraging because he's projected to play 18, and if you bump him up to 22, all of a sudden he starts looking like a much better play. And then if that 22 turns into 24 or 26, which is absolutely possible, then I think you're talking about maybe a guy who's a really good play. But Zubac, did his thing. He's without Marcus Morris. He always has good games, and he did again. And I think he probably will again. That's pretty much where I'm at with Zubac. He's a little bit of a wild card. It seems like a weird play, but I actually think at 5,300 he's totally reasonable. And I do like this situation. Now, if Holmes is out, by the way, another advantage you get in this situation, if Holmes is out, it will make all of these guys like Metu, even at 5,800, will still be a good play. And not that he's the most exciting 4,400 player on the slate because we just talked about Cousins and my guy Nwora, but Tristan Thompson would be viable without Holmes. I don't think I would love to do it, but he would be viable for what it's worth. But I'm with you. I mean, I think Halliburton could be 9,500 here and might be a better play than the other guys we mentioned. Just take a look at his numbers without Fox on the season. He basically, what's he averaging, like 55 a game or something? It's not 55 really. I'm just kidding. It's more like 48 or 49, but that's better than all the other guys' situations we've been talking about. His usage is right up there near 30%. He's incredibly, effective. He's had double-digit assists in all these games. You bump a few rebounds in there, and he could be putting up 60s in no time. I like this spot for him a lot, so I would be high on Halliburton. And then I actually still like Metu. Metu Okiki is kind of an interesting conversation. It's one that came up the other day, but they were both like cost nothing the other day. But I like Metu. They actually do, he's not just a guy who's out there to rebound and play defense or anything like that. He's got some skills to him. The weird one for me here is the one guy who's going to be low owned. I don't know if I'm just maybe reaching and doing this, but I kind of want to feel, I'm kind of tempted to take a shot with Harrison Barnes here. He's going to be the low owned one of the bunch. Maybe it's reaching for me, but I'm trying to find guys in the 7K, 8K range because I don't want to play the guys who are 9,900 and above because they all seem a little thin. But it's probably a little bit of a reach with him. And then on the Clippers side, I think it's Zubac. That's pretty much it for me.
You don't want to play Paul George, right?
No, it just depends on your build. I guess I could end up with a build that ends up getting to Paul George if I go with the really cheap guys. If we get extra value, which I'm sure we're going to. I mean, we've been doing this long enough to know we're probably going to hear some stuff. But is it worth it though? You know what I mean? Because he's still like Paul George's median his expected production tonight should be basically considered similar to Halliburton's, in my opinion. And they actually are. They're within a few points from what I'm looking at.
Yeah, well, that's why Halliburton's going to, he's projecting as a better play. I mean,
Right. But I don't think Paul George necessarily has a higher ceiling than Halliburton, all things considered with this situation.
He hasn't shown it, that's for sure.
I mean, we saw it early in the season even with him, but that was, I guess Morris is out, so that does open up again for him. But Halliburton in this role, it just feels like a stronger thing. And also, it's not just missing Fox, it's missing Terrence Davis, who was high usage and playing 24 minutes a game. It's missing. They're missing a lot of stuff here. So I'm just going to keep riding the Halliburton thing and feeling good about it. I do think going back to that first game is going to be important because I think that Rubio, especially without knowing what the value might open up later, and who knows what happens in the Clipper game with Holmes, that doesn't really change everything. So I guess it's not that big of a deal. But you never know when Paul George randomly gets scratched for, or Jokic potentially gets scratched before the 5 o'clock game or something like the 8 o'clock game. But I do think playing a little Rubio, Kevin Love, those guys' price ranges, potentially even considering Lauri Markkanen. I don't think that's probably a reach actually. But even guys like Marcus Smart, guys who are going to be out there and have the opportunity to put up games, rather than playing Gary Harris, who he'll be out there. And yes, he's had some games that are a little bit outliers. And I used to be Mr. Gary Harris. I think he's a good basketball player, but play Chuma Okeke instead. You know what I mean? Play the guy with a little more of a ceiling. Play Bogdanovich if people aren't going to be as high on him. Play Herter if Wright's going to be too popular. If Bogdanovich and Herter are both lower owned than DeLon Wright here, I think we're just assuming a little bit too much about DeLon Wright. Like, why are we assuming that he takes over Trae Young's job when they have all these other guys who are basically the Trae and not just Trae insurance, but like that are their real rotation? I mean, DeLon Wright hasn't played 30 minutes in a game this season. That's, we say it's because of Trae Young, sure, but even if he does, why is the ball going to run through him more than it is Bogdanovich? If it's my team, it's going through Bogdanovich or Herter. I don't know. That's just the one that doesn't.
I've seen, we've seen over the years, Bogdanovich he can play point guard, if need be, so yeah, I agree with that. I'd like to just get some kind of, clarity that Bogdanovich is not on a minutes limit of some kind or something like that. And then it's so funny. I'm trying to find some other guys in this Clipper game just for whatever's, and seeing some more of these like overpriced guys. Like you see like Reggie Jackson at 8,100. It reminds me of back to, remember even that Orlando game, Cole Anthony at 9,100. I mean, they're these guys that are really getting jammed up there, which makes me want to play Jokic. You know what I mean? Like it's
Jokic is going to be a tough fade.
Yeah,
it's a very tough fade to me because those raw points. I mean, we have a lot of guys we mentioned who could all hit ceilings, and then you might end up with like 400 scores tonight. But every time we think that's going to happen, Sheets, what happens? It goes completely the other way. 2 guys just end up with like putting up like 9 or something, and guys end up with it in the winning lineups, even with the guys like with a 12 or something like that. You know what I mean? Because everybody plays some version of these guys, and maybe just playing the guys we feel more sure on the minutes and positive on the production. That's why I like a guy like Dean Wade. Like, I know it sounds ridiculous. Like, I don't want to play the less than 4K guys, but you're 3,800. And I know he's going to play 35 minutes. Like, they just do it all the time. We've seen this with Jared Allen and with the other guys in. They play him a ton of minutes. And if a guy's going to play 30 something minutes, it's really hard for him not to put up 20 fantasy points. It really is, especially on an offense that's missing, at least, two of your focal points in Mobley and Sexton. So maybe, you know what, if you're going to play the weird guy and we're talking about all these other guys, why wouldn't we play Darius Garland? Because at least all of the offense, you could argue, would fall on his.
I was gonna say that. I mean, when we were talking about playing these other guys from Cleveland, I was just lazy. I didn't see. I'm like, is Garland out or is Sexton out? Garland's 9,700.
9,700 is crazy. But like, if we're gonna talk about the other guys, he's not really crazier than they are.
I mean, you got to play Rubio before him, though.
Oh no, for sure. And on FanDuel, you should be playing Garland at 7,200. And Garland can also put up a dud even without these guys. I really think Kevin Love is going to go just completely nuts. So I'm going to stick by that read. And then we also did we forget about one thing in Boston? Oh, Robert Williams is going to be back tonight. Okay, because the illness, we didn't know what was happening, but okay. I have him as in right now. Because if he was out again, you could reach a little bit and play Cantor at 5K. I don't think it's that crazy if he's. Right. And by the way, it's not crazy to play Robert Williams either at 5,500.
Is he still really cheap on FanDuel?
Let me see.
Is he under 5,500 on FanDuel? No way. Right?
It's like I feel like playing Robert Williams is like, he's a poor man's old version of Jared Allen, what we used to do. Like, you're playing him knowing that you're going to get like some 15s in or 10s in your thing, but you're going to get the occasional 45. On FanDuel, he's 5,600.
Without looking, even though he's out, what's Jared Allen's price?
I don't think he has a price because he's out.
He has a price, but he's out.
93, 87, I don't know.
9,800.
9,800. It's crazy. What a world we live in. Anyway, guys, we'll be live with you at 6:30 Eastern, and we'll cover the rest of this stuff. It's obviously going to be an interesting slate, like all of them are these days, and hopefully we can point us all in the right direction.
Wait, I want to show you something. Look at the center position here on DraftKings. Look at what this looks like.
I'm looking at FanDuel on your screen.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'm sharing the wrong screen there.
Uh-oh.
It says your screen sharing. Okay. Supposed to be, I don't know what's going on then. Okay.
What were you going to show me on the DraftKings though?
Oh, well, hold on. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to do it again. Hold on. Share screen. We're going to share this one. Okay. Now do you see DraftKings?
Yeah. Oh, it's ridiculous. Just absolutely ridiculous. Oh my God. It's going to be a weird day, guys. Well, good luck to us on finding out the best way to do it. We'll be with you at 6:30 Eastern time. And yeah, let's try and make some money today. Good luck, everybody.
By the way, before you do that, I apologize. Like if we had been, if I was sharing the wrong screen the whole time, it's possible you guys were just staring at like, let me
your
see
sheet.
what the monitor was.
We were seeing your sheets, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't mean to do that. I had the lineup builder on the other side. Okay, it doesn't matter. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
I just wanted to make sure I didn't have like other stuff.
Okay. No, nothing out there. Nothing crazy. All right, good luck, everybody.